G'day everyone. Thought we'd have a discussion today about an article that I just saw in Sony Alpha camera rumours. It's interesting because it's probably playing to the way that I was thinking about what's going to happen when Nikon and Canon release their new full-frame mirrorless cameras. I watched that one camera guy and Jason's live discussion yesterday, and they were saying that they believe that the A6700 would be coming first, but I'm tending to disagree with that because I actually think that the full-frame A7S III is going to be announced first. But let's have a look at this document. Basically, what they're saying is here that Sony's serious answer to Canon and Nikon's full-frame mirrorless will follow soon after their announcement. And this makes sense to me, and I do think that probably Sony have held off in doing any announcements. Like, they probably could have announced the A7S III a while ago, actually. I think there's a number of reasons why they've held that back. One is because they knew what was going to happen with Nikon and Canon, and also they're waiting on a new EVF, which I'll talk about in a minute, which will be amazing if they do incorporate that, and I'm sure they will, into their A7S III. But I do think they have to answer those two cameras. But let's just go back to this document for a second, because I'll scroll down so that you can see it, what they're talking about here. They're saying the two announcements basically are going to be on August the 23rd. Nikon are going to do their announcement, and they're going to have the Z6 and the Z7. Now, I think what they're talking about there too, there's going to be a 24 megapixel camera, and there's going to be a high megapixel camera, which is probably going to relate to basically their D850. I think that's probably what's going to happen. So they're going to have the lower resolution one and the higher resolution one. And I do think that the higher resolution one is going to be basically based from that D850, which is a great camera. It really is a good camera apart from the autofocus for video. And that's the thing that we still have to wait and see if Nikon can do something in that area, because at this stage they haven't been able to. If you're dealing with stills, they've had no problem at all. But if you're dealing with video autofocus or tracking, that's where the issues have been there as well. But also there is one interesting thing that they're saying they're going to release these two cameras with the 58mm 0.95 lens. Now that is really going to be an amazing thing. If Nikon can pull that off and it works fantastically, that's certainly something that Sony haven't got at this stage, having a 0.95 lens. Now, would you shoot portraits at 0.95? Possibly not, but it'd be fun to try and just to get a difference. But it might mean that you can get a beautiful result if you're shooting at 1.2. So that's a really interesting lens, and that's certainly something I'd love to have a try of if they do release a good lens. Being 58mm, it's very close to the 55 Sony that I use at the moment, and I love that focal length. So this is going to be a great thing too for portraits. And if that's the lens that they release straight away, which looks like it is going to be, it's going to be a fantastic thing for Nikon. At the same time here, you're saying that that's the August the 23rd. They also have rumours that the Canon full-frame mirrorless is going to be announced on September the 4th and the 5th. And there's all specs that you can read about that too, and I'll put this document down below so you can have a look at that. And this is where they're saying that Sony Alpha Rumors have said that they've been in contact with people, and they've told them that to expect a serious answer after the Canon and Nikon announcements. And they're just saying in here that, but Sony is learning fast, and after all, they have the leading tech when it comes to sensor quality and electronic parts. They're saying here that they think the Nikon probably and the Canon may have better ergonomics. But that's really debatable. I don't really have a problem at all with the Sony ergonomics. I'm used to it now, and I find it's fine. But clearly they're saying that the Nikon will be more ergonomically usable, the same as the Canon. So the interesting thing here is that, and this is why I wanted to have a discussion with you all on this, because I want your comments down below about what you think about this. I don't think that Sony's going to answer this with the A6700, because I do think that if Nikon release, and they are going to release, a full-frame mirrorless, Canon probably also will be releasing a full-frame mirrorless. And Nikon have already said that they're going to release this 0.95 58mm lens. Sony have to answer that with a full frame camera, and I don't think an a6-700 is going to be good enough. Remember, you're dealing with APS-C as against full frame, and I think if Sony are really going to try and blow these out of the water, they have to release something that's going to be competitive with the same type of sensor, and that has to be the a7S III. This is why I really believe that the a7S III is going to be announced first and the a6-700 later. They may announce both at the same time. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're just going to see the a7S III announced first. Now, what does Sony have to do about that to combat basically if these cameras are really good? Well, for starters, I do think that they'll probably put the A9 focusing into the a7S III. So that is going to be outstanding if you're dealing with video tracking. And it's probably easily as good as anything that Canon have got. Remember, I did say to you that Nikon haven't got anything at this stage that can approach what Sony and Canon do. The A9 clearly and the a7 III is a step above anything that Nikon has done. So we're going to have to wait and see how their lenses perform in that regard. We also don't know how they're going to perform if you use their other lenses on this system as well with the adapter, how they're going to perform. But clearly, Sony have to produce something that is going to outclass those two cameras. And if you look at it, they are about to announce something here. If you look at this document again, they're saying down here that they've got this new 5.6 million dots EVF. I don't think there's going to be anything like that out there at all. And that is really going to be an amazing thing, particularly if you're coming from video where you do want to do manual focusing. Having an outstanding EVF and you're doing critical manual focusing really will make a difference. I can definitely tell the difference when I'm using my A9 as against the a7 III. Due to that difference in resolution. Like if I'm trying to do macro photography and or macro video and I'm trying to zoom in, it's much harder if you're dealing with the a7 III EVF as against the A9 for getting critical focus. Some may say they're fine. I definitely appreciate the higher res EVF. So when you're dealing with 5.6 million dots, basically double what we're dealing with now, it's going to be an incredible EVF. And if you're dealing with something like they may do something with the A9 sensor that will go into the a7S III. You don't know what they're going to do, but clearly I think Sony have been holding back for a reason, and I do believe once Canon and Nikon have announced both of their cameras, which now is only a matter of 2 or 3 weeks away, I think then Sony are going to announce something very early after that, which I believe will blow the others out of the water, and I can't wait to see what they actually do. So please, this was just a discussion because I want to get your opinion. Do you think an a6-700 should be first, or do you think that Sony should answer this with an a7S III to combat anything that Nikon and Canon can do as well? So leave those comments down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Bye for now, guys.